Ladies and gentlemen, the Premier League fixtures are out. Transfer window chaos is in full flow. Do not go on Twitter because people are getting very emotional. And Aston Villa players are tearing it up at the World Cup. Wow, who'd have thought that? And somehow UEFA and the SCR rules are ruining Aston Villa fans' evening. Why can't you just let us enjoy being decent for once? We're the Europa League winners, man. And welcome to the new show, our Sunday roundup, looking at everything that's happened at AVFC throughout last week. Welcome back to the Terrace View. I am your host, Jay, and if you are new around here, please hit that subscribe button, drop us a like, because you're not going to want to miss these. Every Sunday throughout a boring off-season, unless you're actually enjoying the World Cup or staying awake, fair play to you. We are going to be looking back through everything AVFC throughout Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and all the news outlets, and wrapping it into one place for you to find everything that's happened. So if that sounds good, you might want to stick around. Every single week, we'll be running through these 5 sections then. First up, Villa headlines. All the big news from around Aston Villa. Everything you need to know from the past 7 days. Moving on to section 2, we have the big juicy one, transfer talk. The rumours, the targets, the latest movement in what is shaping up to be one of the biggest and most monumental transfer windows in the club's recent history. Section 3, the one main talking point throughout this week. The main story of the week that every Villa fan is debating. We are going to get into it properly. Section 4, fan questions of the week. Your chance to get involved, your questions, your comments, your hot takes. This week, it is a big one. Then last but not least, on to section 5. One thing we are looking forward to, because even in the most complicated summer transfer window, there is always something to get excited about if you're an Aston Villa fan right now. 5 sections, everything covered, everything Aston Villa, no fluff. Put the kettle on, grab yourself a beverage, let's get into it. It is shaping up to be a blockbuster of a pre-season. However, it all starts, as always, with the same old faces at the Bescott. Warsaw on the 21st of July. See you there. And then we're moving on to some of Unai's old foe, Real Sociedad. And then the big one, the Asian tour, starting off in Jakarta on the 1st of August. Then we're off to Thailand. And then the big one, ladies and gentlemen, the big one, I've been excited about this. Bayern bloody Munich again. As if we haven't haunted them enough in recent seasons and in their history as Europa League holders. Just let that land for a second, Villa fans. And then straight from that massive mouth-watering pre-season fixture, we have the Super Cup against PSG, Paris Saint-Germain, the old enemy, in Salzburg, in Austria. What a trip this is going to be. However, UEFA doing their best to shit on Aston Villa again. We only have 7,000 tickets, and there has been a lot of uproar on Twitter about the categories yet again. The prices of the tickets aren't too bad, ranging from 30 to 150 euros. There will only be 7,000 Villa fans. The stadium that holds 28,000 people. UEFA should be ashamed of yourself. That is an absolute disgrace. But we will come back to UEFA and all their dodgy dealings and their obsession with our football club later on in the pod. But Villa fans have had plenty to watch this week. Starting with Guinea, banging in bangers for Scotland. Say bangers, maybe a slight deflection. Emmy keeping clean sheets for Argentina, man, it's just standard for the bloke. And then we have the England trio, Watkins, Rodgers, Konsa, all involved in the England setup to a degree. 11 players are at the World Cup representing our football club. 11. 4 years ago, it was just 4 players. Now it's 11, 7 different nations. Wow. That is mad. That is the story of this football club right there. Now on to everybody's favourite thing to talk about all summer long, transfers. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to be straight with you. This window could genuinely be one of the most monumental in Aston Villa history. Also the most complicated, so let's try and break it down. Now let's start with the one that won't go away. Morgan Rodgers. Villa preparing for a potential exit. I feel like it is inevitable. They're holding firm on a price. They are going to try and come and take our boy away from our football club. You best come with riches, because you need to line Nassef's pockets with at least 100 million. Now with Manchester City buying Elliot Anderson for 116 mil. 116 mil. You best start around there. And if you are to believe Tanswell and co, Aston Villa have already started to scout out potential new players. That is a big talent and a big number of goal returns that you are going to need to replace ASAP. Because last season, Aston Villa relied heavily on Morgan Rogers' output. But the main encouraging thing for Villa fans out there who don't want to see Morgan Rogers go is that Arsenal, PSG, Bayern Munich, Chelsea, it's all just speculation at the moment. Nobody has come in with a concrete offer for our star boy. Aston Villa are openly saying we're not encouraging offers. We do not want to sell. So currently, at this moment in time, 10 o'clock on a Sunday, there is nothing. Morgan Rogers is currently an Aston Villa player and is going nowhere. That is the sign of a club and its owners who want its destiny in its own hands. On to incomings then, and speaking of Arsenal, Leandro Trossard is being linked with Villa rather regularly. He's believed to want to stay in the Premier League rather than a move to Turkey, with Besiktas also being heavily linked. He's into the final year of his contract, and then let's break it down. Why is Leandro Trossard going to be a decent signing for a Premier League team? Oh, he won the title. He's got Champions League experience. He's going to be pretty affordable with only 1 year left on his deal. I don't know about you, but I wouldn't mind that one. Uncle Unai, sprinkle his magic on there. And he always used to love a goal against the Villa. So, now there's been two players that have caused a lot of controversy amongst the Villa fan base as well. Emerson Royale, I don't really want to get into it, but the one I do want to get into is Jarrod Bowen. Now, according to Tanswell and The Athletic, Unai Emery is a huge fan. But a deal does seem difficult, with Villa having to sell first to kind of generate that 50 million pounds West Ham are going to demand for him. Now, with 11 goals and 9 assists last season, and a team that got relegated, 29 years old, is he really worth 50 million? Is that the world that we are living in? That brings me perfectly on to the talking point of the week. The UEFA PSR reality facing our football club. Because I genuinely think that is the most important part of Aston Villa's summer story. I think maybe a few Villa fans are either laying it under the rug or don't want to address it. It's a document signed in June 2025 from UEFA, which is a 3-year settlement agreement that dictates what Aston Villa can and can't spend, and crucially, what has to leave before anything can arrive. Villa accepted a fine of €5 million up front and another 15 mil hanging over their heads conditionally. And these targets and restraints are going to get harder year by year, making Uncle Unai and his recruitment team's job even harder. They accumulate, and Villa needing to effectively break even in 26-27. Miss those targets and the consequences aren't just financial. They are based on sporting merit. Potential exclusion from Europe. That is a nuclear option, and it is very real, Villa fans. Very real. So what does all this technical jargon mean for this transfer window? And if you haven't seen that guy on Instagram and TikTok who does the spreadsheets, most Villa fans have done the quick maths. Now, it is believed that Aston Villa have a war chest of £100 million to spend. However, anything you're reading about potential incomings, something has to give first. Somebody has to go. Who could that be, I wonder? Talking Morgan Rogers for big money, or do you ship off 3 or 4 lesser players? Who's going to want them? Another one that we spoke about already, Emi Martinez. You're not going to demand a big fee for him. However, he's on high wages. So if you free up those wages, you can use it in your financial SCR structure. Exactly why Villa are looking and entertaining Juventus on this Emi Martinez deal. Makes financial sense, even if it breaks Villa fans' hearts. And this is not the Villa owners being tight. This is UEFA holding us to a deal we had to sign. We have to be smart about it. These are hard circumstances for Unai, Vidigani, Oblé to work under. We have earned the right to be ambitious as a football club Villa fan. Now we have to try and reach these levels of ambition, but with a very limited amount of control. And that simultaneously is the most exciting yet scary thing about being a Villa fan this summer. I've blabbered on and scaremongered enough, as has anybody on Twitter and social media and YouTube. So let's get in to you guys, your fan questions, and we got our first ones this week. Buzzing. And keeping it in touch with the World Cup theme, after last night's game against Panama, there's basically only one question. It kind of really picked itself. Unless you've been living under a box, England won 2-0. Top the group, job done. But the performance, and specifically the whole debate before the game, who should start in the 10, Bellingham or Rogers? Let's actually dive into these numbers because the stats are interesting. Rogers covered the most distance out of any England player, 11.4 kilometres or something like that, with 81 sprints. His work rate is never the question, but the end product in the England shirt, well, that is ESPN Gave him a 6. Said he combined well with Saka, but struggled to find his feet in the game. And it was clear to see on the eye he was struggling to get into any form of Rodgers-like rhythm, really. That is not the same kind of performance that we'd be expecting at Aston Villa. Maybe at the start of the season when he was getting booed by his own fans, which I wasn't proud of. I'm sure you weren't either, but it was happening. The performance levels weren't quite there, and he could not link for the life of him with Bellingham in the middle. Newspapers were even more brutal with his score, some ranking them 5. He was frustratingly quiet in that number 10 role. I mean, I've hyped him up to all my friends thinking that this guy is going to bring home the World Cup for us. He was lacking that spark, which makes him such an asset to Aston Villa. Bellingham, on the other hand, completely different night. SofaScore gave him a 9.3, a goal, an assist. You stick them hands out like a honey badger, mate. 2 big chances created, 4 tackles won. Here is the tactical detail, which I think is key to the whole debate. Bellingham was deployed in a deeper role, more like a number 6/8 hybrid, which allowed him to see far more of the ball. He was still able to make those forward runs whilst bringing a lot of security to the middle of the pitch. And these forward runs from deep led him to be involved in both the goals. That is not just a number 8 or a number 10 performance. It is a world-class performance. Hats off to him. A 6/8 hybrid in that role, given that kind of performance, he's genuinely unplayable sometimes. Now, here's my honest take. I do not believe that Morgan Rodgers is the problem. I think it's Thomas Tuchel's tactics. Tongue twister. He's been asked to play a role at international level that he has not played at club level. Yes, he plays in the 10, but it is completely different to the freedom that Unai gives him at Villa Park. And he has Emery building his system completely around Morgan Rodgers, how he can free Morgan Rodgers up and get him into these pockets. He has a license to roam under Unai Emery. And for Thomas Tuchel's tricky tinkers at the World Cup in a structured 4-3-3 against a low block like Ghana, it just doesn't work that way. And then TNT did a brilliant job. They asked the question that we're all thinking this morning. Will Thomas Tuchel actually start Bellingham and Rodgers in the knockouts? Because let me tell you now, Thomas Tuchel is not picking Morgan Rodgers ahead of Jude Bellingham, given that performance. Rodgers is on the bench, mate. The question I have for you, Villa fans, if Morgan Rodgers does end up on the bench for England, does that change his thinking about leaving Aston Villa? Because I think it actually might. Let me know, drop a comment down below. To raise up the spirits and finish with a bang, we're on to our final section. One thing we are looking forward to. Now, to finish on a positive, because there is generally a lot to be positive about as a Villa fan. This might have all seemed negative, but there is a lot of uplift around the club. And I don't want us to lose sight of that, given all this crappy transfer news and UEFA. John McGinn scored for Scotland for the first time at a World Cup since 1990. And that celebration has gone viral. Questions from all over the world, from different types of media outlets, asking him about the goggles. Our captain on the biggest stage, giving it that, doing the most Guinea thing possible. I love that man. Get him a statue. Goes without saying that Emi Martinez just keeps clean sheets for Argentina. That's what the bloke does. He plays some of his best career football in an Argentina shirt, and you've just got to admire it. Whatever the summer brings, in this moment, he's still our goalkeeper, and he's definitely showing that he's the world's number 1, or at least in the conversation. Again, he's absolutely world class. And Villa fans, again, get to cheer on our boys in an England shirt, progressing into a World Cup, which hopefully we stand a good chance of winning. And that is your roundup, ladies and gentlemen. That is this week's main talking points that I've found across social media. If you are new here, it is completely free to hit that subscribe button or drop a like. It is muchly appreciated. Genuinely means everything to a small channel like this growing. Thank you so much for your support. We have grown massively over the last 2 videos. Drop your Rodgers Bellingham take in the comments below. Anything that you think I've missed, big story-wise from Aston Villa this week, drop it down in the comments below. Let me know your thoughts. I've been Jay. This is the Terrace View. I'll either catch you next Sunday for another one, or I'll see you on Wednesday for the Willow Walk and Talk series, which is going down very well. Thank you for all your feedback and support. All that's left to say is up the bloody Villa. Come on, me babies.
Up the Villa.